The information provided is for educational purposes only. By listening, you are not entering a patient-provider relationship, and the information provided is not clinical advice that is to be applied to your specific situation. If you or someone you care about is in danger, call 911. If you or someone you know is being abused, call your local abuse hotline. A number you can call is 1-800-799-7233. Abuse in a spiritual space. Did you know that in the space that we call church, in the communities that we depend on, that we seek God from, we can also be privy to abuse? And that is a real thing. And that is what we're going to talk about today. In episode 7 of the Abuse series, I'm bringing on my special guest, Dr. Foluso, and she's going to break down from a psychological perspective, from a psychologist thought and mindset on how that can even be possible. If you have experienced spiritual abuse, you want to stay and watch this entire episode. If you're wondering as you're listening to me right now, could that be me? We're going to even break down what that looks like and how you can identify it so you can answer that question for yourself. So no matter what, or even if you want to be educated, no matter what spectrum you're on, you're going to get something out of this episode. We're going to run a quick 60-second commercial, and then we're going to come right back. I'm going to bring my guest on. But before I go, please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, and comment. Again, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'll be right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You gotta check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you gotta confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you gotta do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. Thank you so much in advance for liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Again, we're talking about spiritual abuse, how to identify and recover from spiritual abuse. And what we're covering in today's episode is liberation from spiritual abuse, identifying spiritual abuse, understanding why one would allow themselves to stay in a space where spiritual abuse is happening to them, how to recover from spiritual abuse. And then lastly, I can't wait to talk about this, God. Where was God in all of this, and how does one define God in recovery? All of that and more. Without further delay, Dr. Foluso, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, Terrell. How are you doing today?
I won't complain. I'm doing I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Before we even get into all the things, introduce yourself and just give us some background on how you became a psychologist that specializes in spiritual abuse of all things.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Dr. Felicia. I own a private practice called Skill Set Counseling. And in that practice, I focus a lot on spiritual abuse and helping individuals recover from that. My background, I am a licensed psychologist. My PhD is in clinical psychology, and that is studying human behavior, the neural parts of it and the dysfunctional parts of it. And so, the reason that I started getting into spiritual abuse is part of my other specialties involve OCD and anxiety. And I was noticing that individuals who were coming to me for help were having these spiritual experiences that were fueling the anxiety and back and vice versa. So I was seeing a strong connection between certain types of spiritual experiences and psychopathology.
Wow.
And that led me to think, and then seeing just the commonalities, also looking, just looking at the media and hearing stories about these mega churches or small churches, whatever it is, and people who were in those situations who were undergoing spiritual abuse.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and then part of it too was just my own experience. I had experienced spiritual abuse during my training and, my current role as a psychologist, as a licensed psychologist. And,
Mhm.
I asked myself if I was not aware of some of these things and I didn't even recognize that they were abusive, how much harder would it be for someone who's not even trained in this area?
Well,
Um,
and not to interrupt you, but so you're saying that as a trained expert, you experienced spiritual abuse and didn't even recognize the signs as a trained expert?
yes, that's correct.
So how much more the person who hasn't a clue, who's just going to church to serve God intimately and innocently, how much
Mhm.
more are they susceptible to that as well then?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And spiritual abuse is there's a wide range of what can happen. We often think about spiritual abuse in terms of cults, right?
Mhm.
And in terms of people doing some very drastic things that you will see online
Yeah.
or in the media. We think about sexual abuse associated with the spiritual abuse or physical abuse, all these other sorts of major experiences, but they're also small successive
Mm.
experiences that add up and accumulate over time. And I would say that's probably more what I experienced, especially with gaslighting, which we'll get into. But there was a lot of gaslighting in those spiritual environments,
Mm.
and so that's why sometimes when people have been through this and they explain what happened, it's frequently dismissed or critiqued as, "Oh, well, you just don't like the church. You're on a witch hunt to get all the pastors.
Yeah.
You have your own issues with God. Don't take it out on the church."
Yeah.
It's put on the person experiencing. And while people do undergo church hurt and leave the church for whatever reasons, we can't just throw all of that in the category
A
of
big basket of
you're the
chicken.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
and
being
I
misunderstood by the person that you serve on the usher board with is
Mhm,
different from being gaslit or manipulated. Before we go further,
exactly.
are you a what is your faith?
Christian.
All right, so and I wanted to say that because I wanted to make sure that we're clear that you're not a atheist banging on the church. You are a Christian. How long have you been in the Christian faith?
Well, probably my whole life, I would say, and active churchgoer as well.
All right, gotcha.
So,
And still go
yeah.
to church now? Are you still
I'm sorry.
You
Yes, I
said
am.
yeah, you said that, yeah. So I
Yeah.
wanna just lay that foundation so no one is because I wanna disarm anything where someone could that other voice in their head can be like, "Well, they probably don't even believe in God." So I
Mhm.
wanna disarm all of that. Ooh, before we go forward, I gotta ask you a question. Can you define spiritual abuse?
Yes. Spirit, and there are lots of definitions out there. This is my own definition that I've created and I believe encapsulates the range of spiritual abuse. And so it's to cause harm or hurt, allow harm or hurt, or justify harm or hurt under the guise of spirituality.
Wow.
So, spirituality is being used as a reason to inflict harm or to allow or justify harm.
Mm,
And something else to remember about spiritual abuse is we tend to associate it with spiritual leaders in a particular spiritual setting, but that doesn't always have to be the case. It can occur between people who are peers.
mhm,
It can also occur outside of a spiritual environment, right?
yeah,
In homes where maybe a particular religion is practiced and these sorts of harmful behaviors are being justified
yeah.
um, under the guise of spirituality.
Yeah, you if I was in this denomination, so you need to be in this denomination. The whole family was raised Muslim, so how dare you not be Muslim?
Mhm,
So it's not even necessarily happening at the mosque, the temple, the church.
mm.
It's happening in the home, just based on tradition or beliefs or something like that. Wow.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
ask you this: what are some key identifiers of spiritual abuse? If somebody's watching this, what's some key identifiers?
You know, it kind of going back to what I said before earlier about the spiritual abuse. So when there's something going on, you're being hurt, you're being harmed,
Mhm.
or that is being allowed. And I'm seeing a lot of the the allowing of harm from others under the guise of spirituality. So respect your elders.
Mhm.
What this leader says is sacrosanct, and we can't go against that. You're supposed to trust and believe what they tell you. So if this happened, it must have happened for a good reason.
For a
Or
reason.
even people, yeah, or just using spirituality again as a way to cause active harm. And so you see signs with that. You'll see a lot of dismissal. I've noticed that people who tend to be spiritually abusive dismiss a lot of what their information that they're being given, right? And it's dismissed.
Mhm.
um it especially parts that relate to somebody's humanity, right? And
Yeah.
so spirituality, just because you are a spiritual person doesn't mean you deny your humanity. But a lot of people who engage in this will deny humanity, the
Now
person's humanity.
now you
uh,
just said something, and I'm not gonna go on a rabbit hole. I'm not gonna get on my, soapbox, but I don't think you can have spirituality without humanity. And
mhm,
I'll give 2 examples of what you're saying. One example for a child is, let's just say, uh, uh, I'm a father, and I excessively discipline, corporal punish my child, and then the child comes back and say, "Well, Dad, you really hurt my feelings when you were whooping me," or "Look at this scar or these whelps." And
mhm,
I bypass that my 10-year-old child who does not have capacity to even discern anything. Well, the Bible
mhm,
says, "Spoil the rod, spare the child." I'm going to spare the rod, spoil the child. So God wanted me to do this, and I did it
mhm,
because I love you.
mhm,
Where I ignore, I'll give you another example, then I'll let you run with it. An adult, "Pastor, I'm tired and I'm drained, and I need, the kids just got back in school, and fall revival is here, but I really need to not participate in fall revival. I'll be online because I got to make sure my kids are right, and I'm overworked on my job." Well, I just feel like your spiritual commitment is lacking because God
mhm,
needs you in the house, and if you love God, you love the church. So if you're not coming, then I'm starting to question maybe you're putting family and job before God. Is that
mhm.
what spiritual abuse looks like?
Yes, and that what you described specifically is spiritual bypass, right? And so a spiritual bypass is when you give these cliches and platitudes. So for instance, in the example of a father and their 10-year-old son who's been physically and emotionally harmed by excessive physical discipline, right? They're saying, "I'm hurting." And
Mm,
it's dismissed using
mhm,
spirituality, right? So instead of it's basically the equivalent of saying sit down and shut up in spiritually sanctified terms. Well, spare the rod, spoil the child, or the heart is wicked, right?
right.
Things like that. And a lot of spiritually abusive people they'll pick and choose from spiritual scripts to what fits their agenda, right? They'll ignore the part about how parents should treat their children with kindness, or how we as believers should treat one another with love and not lord authority over them. And they'll ignore this example of Jesus and focus on that one verse to support their agenda. And so you'll see things like that, that spiritual bypass. Even in this, the second example you gave, I know someone who experienced that, and they said, the Bible says you should forsake your father and mother and children to follow Jesus. And so, but the Bible also instructs us how to care for our families, right?
Right,
So
right.
they're taking that specific verse and basically bypassing this person's fatigue. Even and there's so many examples that just show that spirituality and humanity go together, like you said before. Like if we think about the story of Elijah in the Bible, when he wanted to die, he said, i'm,
Yes,
I'm done with life.
yes,
And God didn't sit
yes.
there and tell him,
Yeah.
you have a demon because you're depressed and suicidal. What was he told to do? He was told
Eat
to
and get some sleep.
sleep.
Yes,
Yes.
I
And
love
it
this.
was all, yeah, and that was provided for him, right? So he didn't have
Right.
to do anything. He just ate his food and went to sleep. And then he was reassured that, look, there are others like you. Were this is going God said, I'm going to take care of this. I
Mm,
have There are other people who haven't bowed the knee to Baal, and we're all going to come together, and I'm going to take care of this. But he wasn't treated with harshness. He
yeah,
wasn't judged. He wasn't criticized.
yeah.
His humanity was not only acknowledged, but restored
And
through
minister
that.
was
So,
served. Yeah,
yes, he was minister exactly. And so, when we see and hear of these types of behaviors, it is basically taking abusive behavior, harming and hurting someone under this guise of spirituality.
wow. This So powerful. Really quick, I have two questions. Really quick, I want to ask you. Give me an example of the difference between being controlled versus being obedient,
Okay.
and then I'll answer that, and I'll ask you another.
Okay. So even when we think about authority and being obedient, obedient is a choice, right? You can choose to obey, you can choose to disobey.
Yeah.
We retain our autonomy because as humans, part of our humanity is also our autonomy. We think about when God created Adam and Eve, he didn't tell them to have, he didn't say dominate other humans. They were given dominion over nature, but not over one another, right? That's why we have free will. So we can choose to obey, we can choose not to. But when there's that control, people who are controlling want to take away your option to say yes or to say no. And so it is saying you will do what I ask or
Yeah.
do what I say, regardless of whether you want to or not. And
Right.
again, in spiritual environments, it's spirituality again is used to justify that type of controlling behavior.
So if I could sum that up real quick, obedience is in the hand of the person, and control is in the obedience is internal, and control is external. So if you
Yes.
ask yourself, do I have a controlling pastor? Do something against what he says and see what happens next. All right, one more question, Dr. Felicia, before we go to break.
Okay.
We've you went over spiritual bypassing beautifully. Can you discuss this term used a lot, gaslighting, and then give us an example of what that looks like in a spiritual space?
Gaslighting is when one individual, we'll call them the gaslighter, is trying to get the other person to doubt their ability to perceive reality accurately. Right, and so actually the gaslighting is a term that's actually related to an old movie called Gaslight. It's a black and white movie where this husband wants his wife's inheritance, and so he tries to make her think that she's going crazy, and he
Mhm.
would go in the attic and manipulate the lights, and I think she's seen the lights going on and off, and he's like, "There are no lights going on and off," and he would hide her things. She would put
Uh-huh.
something in one place, he would hide it. She's like, "I thought I put this here." So she basically thought she was going crazy and she doubted her ability to um perceive accurately. And so that's what gaslighters do. And gaslighting is an erosive process, right? Gaslighting is not disagreement, right? It
Mm,
is done intentionally to wear away at that person's autonomy, their ability to perceive,
mm,
their confidence in their ability to perceive accurately. And so that just makes them easier to control,
mm.
and so go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So a gaslighting situation where the person could possibly apologize, but they still sort of make it seem like it wasn't that serious. I know you're
Mm.
hurt, but it really wasn't that serious. I mean, and I would have
Right.
never really done that in a typical situation. Something sort of like that, where it's sort of more
Yeah.
plain or opaque.
Yeah, so, an example is, let's say somebody was hurt by something that someone else did, right? And it's a legitimate I mean, when I say legitimate, like hurt is hurt, right? I don't believe like feelings are feelings and it's what you do with them. So somebody is hurt because of what someone else did. And then they're told, well, you have a spirit of offense or you come with a critical spirit or you have a spirit of something, right?
Uh,
Whereas like anybody in that situation would have gotten hurt by something that
yeah,
person did. It might have been a betrayal of some sort, right? So instead of acknowledging that person's humanity and helping them to work through it. It's like, no, you have this spirit that's bad, or, nobody's perfect. I hear that a lot, right? And so nobody's perfect. I'm sure you've betrayed somebody in the past too.
right,
And
right.
so basically, it's saying that, so when that person now is experiencing that hurt, they're being told that if they are hurt, they are damaged or defective or sinful. And so it's like, no, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt. Denying what actually happened, right? Or maybe I wasn't betrayed, right? Maybe this is just what someone did and trying to just make it not what it is,
Right.
right?
And thereby wearing them down, which gives you more control. Because the next
Exactly.
time they're going to question their offense before they even speak it out. And once you start
Yes.
questioning yourself, they got you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Woo! All right, listen, we need to run a quick break. If you're enjoying this thus far, do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right. Like, share, subscribe, and comment. I'm going to run a quick 60-second advertisement. It's just a minute. Just settle down. We'll be right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. See, that 60 seconds was not that long. All right, we're back with my very special guest, Dr. Foluso. She has so eloquently broken down this thing that's not often talked about, real bona fide spiritual abuse from a clinical psychologist who is trained in this area. Before we went on break, we talked about the what. What is spiritual abuse? What does it look like? What is gaslighting, spiritual bypass? Now we're going to talk about the why. All right. But before we do, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and comment. All right. Oh, and by the way, I'm V Terrell Hill, but I just want to talk about this. Anyways, how in the world does this happen, Dr. Foluso? How does, well, let me ask you more specifically. What's the profile of a likely spiritual abuser?
Yeah, it first of all, it's hard to say exactly because they come in, all shapes and sizes and forms, but there are a few traits that I've noticed and other that I've gleaned from what other people have shared with me. And one thing is they tend to be very charismatic, right? They have a personality that stands out, so to say. They're charismatic, they're charming, they're engaging. They really command respect and authority. They really have that need to control.
Mm,
And it is kind of linked with that. So as I would say kind of like the mask comes off of that charismatic, engaging, charming mask, you'll see like there's this need to control, right? They don't
I'm sorry to interrupt, but why? Why the need to control?
I believe it is due to a very deep-seated insecurity. And I'm not saying this at all to say, "Oh, well, you know, because they're insecure, what they're doing is okay." It's not. We all deal with insecurities, but part of self-awareness, part of emotional health and maturity is acknowledging those insecurities and finding healthy ways to deal with it. And I
Yeah.
found that people who kind of fit this profile, they may tell you that, "Oh, I'm okay with my insecurities and whatnot," but their actions don't show that. So I think that there's a very deep, strong sense of insecurity
Mm,
that they have a they're really unwilling to face that and unwilling to deal with that, whatever it
mm,
is that they're insecure about, right?
wow.
And also just not being emotionally healthy or emotionally mature. And I've said this, before, like in my other videos on my channel, that it surprises and saddens me to see how many people within, especially church environments, but maybe also spiritual environments, are not emotionally healthy or mature. And I'm not saying perfect, right? Because
Right, right.
nobody's perfect. But I'm saying that, like, the basic sense of, like, this is the emotion I'm feeling right now.
Mhm.
Here's a healthy way to deal with it. It's not there. So they might say, okay, I've heard people say like they never get angry, or you're a bad person if you get angry,
Yeah.
right? And anger is a basic, normal, and can even be a helpful emotion depending on how
Yes.
we deal with it.
Correct.
So it's this very restricted range of what is acceptable emotionally. And so they almost seem kind of superhuman, but in a very unhealthy way. Like, I never get offended. I never get sad. This
Mm,
and this happened, and you won't see me crying or getting upset about it. And so there are
yeah.
lots of words, but then, if you cross them, watch out, right?
Yes. Right.
And if your ability to say, we talked about saying no, but even just being asked a request, "Oh, I want to think about it," or "I'm not sure," you do something different. Watch what happens, right? We don't want to look at words. We want to look at that subtle but caustic retaliation that can happen with spiritually abusive leaders.
Listening to you, it gives me that this is done more on a macro level than a micro level. It's not as, at least in the beginning, it's not
Mm,
as raw versus as, are you sure God is leading you to do that? Are
mhm.
you sure God is
Yeah.
leading you to leave? More than
Yes, exactly.
you out of order. Now, I think it can
Right.
evolve to that once they get
Yes.
their grasp on you. My word,
Yeah, because think about it, if it was like that, that raw in your face,
right.
few people are gonna stick around for that, right? And so it's done it's a slow thing. It's a
Yeah,
slow build up, just like you described.
yeah, wowzers, wowzers. Okay, what about the profile of a likely spiritual victim?
Like I said, I wouldn't say there's one profile. There are many different people can fall victim to this. And I want people, as you're listening to this, don't judge yourself or blame yourself if you have some of these characteristics, right? Because if you're in a healthy environment, that wouldn't happen, right? In a healthy spiritual environment. But some things I think are sort of backgrounds, some cultural backgrounds where they really elevate spiritual leaders. And so maybe the pastor is like maybe second in command to the mayor or something. Like we don't question what the pastor says. We don't do this, we don't do that. So it's sort of like maybe a microculture or even a culture, the big C culture.
Mhm.
There's also strict, I've noticed things like strict hierarchies, right? And so this is where the pastor is. This is where men are. This is where women are. This is where
Uh,
kids are, and we don't cross that, right? And so
right.
if an adult tells you something, then it must be true. If they're older than you, it must be true. You have to follow it. So
Right.
hierarchies are what they are, and they're inherent in a lot of places. But when they're so strict,
Yeah.
it creates these things box people in, and so they are trained or acculturated to not question certain types of authority. Like if I think this and the pastor thinks this, then you know what? I must be wrong. And
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
that.
Don't question my authority because basically my word is God's word, point blank period. I've
Yeah.
I've
And
I've seen instances where the pastor controls when you buy cars, when you buy houses, and if you do it
mhm,
without going to them, it's like, well, how dare you do this without consulting God? Like,
yeah.
and the
And
consulting
when they-
God literally is kin to you didn't ask me to do this.
exactly. They conflate their authority with God's authority. If you think about it, I mean, the reason we're all so susceptible to this is because of what I call, well, not what I call, the psychological term called the halo effect. And so we see one thing about
Mhm.
a person and we assume all these other characteristics as a result,
Mm,
right? And so maybe somebody is funny. So because they're funny, they must be all these other good things that we really don't know, but because they're this. And so when we think about leaders, we tend to assume good things about leaders automatically, right? And
yeah,
now take that spiritual leaders, right? So there's that halo effect is amplified. I mean, think about it when you're in any sort of spiritual setting, where does the pastor, whoever, where do they stand? They stand in an elevated
the
position.
elevated space, yes.
Yeah. So we basically, whether we're told this explicitly or not, their voice is the voice of God to us. They're speaking as a mouthpiece of God. That's what we automatically assume. And
Yeah,
so it's very important to understand that all these sort of like built-in factory settings to us as humans
right,
make us more susceptible to spiritual abuse than we may even realize.
right. You really just hit it, but I'm gonna ask this anyway before we go on break. How is it so easy to experience abuse in a spiritual place of all places?
We assume a lot about spirituality, right? Spirituality exists in the realm of the unseen,
Mhm.
right? We can't quantify certain things. We can quantify someone's productivity in the workplace, but can we quantify faith? Can we quantify peace?
Right.
No. So there's already a built-in element of I would say intangibility. It's not the spirituality is intangible. And so there is going to be a certain amount of uncertainty with spirituality. That's
Right.
why, many spiritual practices require faith and they emphasize faith because you can't see certain things. You don't know what this outcome is going to look like. You can't physically see God.
There are no key
And
point
so,
indicators for
I'm sorry?
true there are no key point indicators for true growth. Like, you can't
Mm.
there's no metric scale And if you fall up under the metric scale, it could easily be put back on you. You didn't believe enough.
Mhm.
It's you. It's
Yes.
definitely not me. It's not the church. You didn't
Mhm.
give enough. You didn't. So the parts of growth that are normally uh, graded in other areas, it's like, for example, if um, I produce a movie, the box office is going to tell me was the movie was whether the movie was a success or not. But in a spiritual space, it's all belief in sort of in air, like it's
Mhm.
all sort of like contrived from some kind of subjective definition that everybody happens to agree on. So it's hard to really track.
It's hard to track, and because of that, we see a lot of legalism, right? So you'll see
Yeah,
things like if you attend church all the time, you're a super Christian,
yeah,
right? But they try to force these indicators to say this is how you are, this is how spiritual you are because of how much you do this. And I'm not saying that those things are bad. When you attend, you get benefits from it, and it does reflect something about who you are on the inside. But when you make that specific things, these, I would say, unalterable standards. This is how
yeah,
it must be. If you don't do this, and that means you are this. If you do this, then it
yeah,
means this.
yeah,
You've removed a lot of what really matters, right? And so there are these arbitrary standards, and so that's why people will say, "Oh, you weren't at this event. Why weren't you there?
yeah,
You bought a car. You chose to marry someone, and you didn't talk to the pastor about it. So that means you're a rebellious person, or whatever label they're going to put on you." And
yeah.
spiritually abusive environments, language is weaponized a lot. And so, that's one reason why it can be so easy for these things to occur. And also, people, we are, as human beings, we want certainty, right? Uncertainty is uncomfortable for us. And so if we're in an environment where they tell us, "Oh, if you do this, then you're super spiritual," we, as hard as it is probably for us to admit or realize, we crave that because we want to see, we want tangibility, we want validation. And so again, those are some reasons why that can occur.
I love this. I love, love, love. Really, really, really quick. Adults, we've spent a lot of time on children,
Mhm,
um, and it might be a given, but maybe somebody just needs to hear this.
mhm.
Can adults be groomed and abused in spiritual spaces?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see this very frequently, um, in the way, there's there's a term referred to as love bombing, right? When someone wants to control somebody, they give them excessive and inappropriate gifts, or things like that. In the spiritual environment, it could be, okay, they have their sights set on a particular person or a particular group of people or whatever to control. And so it's giving them a lot, maybe excessive admiration, maybe, "Oh, we usually have people wait 3 years and take these courses to do this, but we're going to promote you to this position right now
Yeah, yeah,
because we like you so much,"
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever it is. And so there's that grooming, because what, and then slowly, they start to be everything to that person. They'll work in that environment. So then they become financially dependent. It's like, "Oh, you know what? We'll pay for your school, or just attend this church school." So there's this slow web of like
Yeah.
coercive control where the finances, family life is being taken control of. They're given a lot of things, but it's quid pro quo.
Mhm.
Something is expected in return, and they're going to come calling
Oh,
for what they want from you,
you better
right?
ask. Yeah,
Yes, they will. And so
yeah.
that's why, but again, it's very subtle. And sometimes you'll see this in environments where the newcomers are given a whole different experience from
Oh,
what
yeah,
the regular attenders are seeing, right? So they're going to put on the fireworks and bring out the
yeah.
balloons and everything for this new person and everything. And so you'll see a stark difference between that new person, how they're being treated, and how everyone else is being treated, or new people, whatever it is. But again, it's grooming. And even with that grooming too, it can cause division between people who are receiving one type of treatment. They're like, "Okay,
Right,
we really know what's going on," versus
correct.
this other person. So it is being groomed for that person to be dependent on that abusive system for everything. And
Mm,
so it's going to be hard to leave, right? When their lives are, entwined with that system.
yeah, so you're just not leaving God, you're leaving a paycheck, you're leaving friends and families that you've built over the years
Yeah.
being in that si you're leaving your entire life. You have to that it's sort of set up to get its web in you. and it's hard to disconnect. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, 60-second break. If you're enjoying this conversation, make sure you do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, and if you've comment, do it again. We'll be back in 60 seconds. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833-458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. Welcome back to episode 7 of the Abuse series. My name is V. Terrell Hill. I am the spiritual leader, community leader of a private community called Safe Space. And this is what we're really doing today with my very good guest, very intelligent, well-spoken guest, Dr. Foluso. We're creating a safe space for those of you who might feel like you are in a spiritually abusive space, who have suffered from spiritual abuse or a victim of spiritual abuse, or want to be educated on what it looks like so you can help the next person. Whatever area or part of the spectrum you're on, you are finding value, I believe. I'm not even going to ask you if you found. I know you're finding value in this conversation. Before we get into this next segment 1, we talked about the what. What is spiritual abuse? Segment 2, the why. How does it happen, and what does the profile of a victim and an abuser look like? And then segment 3, we're going to talk about the fix, the solution. So you want to hang in for the next 10 minutes or so because we're talking all things solutions. Dr. Foluso, real quick, what would you tell the person who believes they're being abused by their spiritual community or leader?
First thing I would say is safety first, right? And so if you're in any physical danger, someone is being abused that you know, we need to take care of the safety things
Mm,
first. And even if you know, watching or listening, like their local abuse hotlines you can call, make sure that you are taking care of your safety first. And don't be afraid either to use outside resources because a lot of times in these environments they'll say, oh, like shelters are bad and they have an anti-church agenda or this and that or whatever, so you're discouraged from using the resources you need.
right.
If you need you need an attorney, you need the police to be involved, don't hesitate, use those resources because your safety must come first.
Mm,
And then given that everything with the safety is fine, you want to start to you want to decide what you want to do, but you don't have to decide right away because some people are like, well, I want to stay for this reason or leave. I'm not in the position to tell you this is what you have to do, but I want you to start looking at your environment with new eyes.
mm,
Start to disentangle yourself from that web. If you're asked to do something, say, I'll think about it. Don't just say yes.
mhm.
Things like even your social media. A lot of in spiritually abusive environments, they're watching people's social media
Correct.
and watching what they post. So maybe you post less frequently or just post benign stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But think about things that maybe you've signed. If you've kept a copy of it, that's good. Maybe make sure that if you use an attorney that you can show that to them and they can find some, whatever it is, the issues with it, so it's not legally binding.
Yeah.
So definitely make sure you do that. And then just start looking at how you are connected and how you can slowly disconnect. Maybe it's finding another source of employment if that's
Yeah.
all your employment, right? Start making backup plans. If you have physical, tangible assets at that place, start taking that stuff back
One
if you
one
can. You
cord at
have
a
to be,
time. Yeah.
yeah, yep, you
Yeah.
have to be, and you have to be smart about how you do this, right? If you just go and say, I'm taking back all this stuff, that's not going to happen. But you need to be subtle about it. You need to be you need to use common sense and you need to be under the radar in a way where, of course, yeah, you know, you need to be ethical and whatnot, but
Right.
you don't want to just announce what you're doing. Oh, I've had it with all of you. I'm at like,
I'm gone.
no, that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You don't want to do that. You want to slowly build, slowly take things out. And as you decide what you want to do, start building a community outside of that spiritual.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that
Mhm,
because you can slow walk it. So, for example,
mhm,
I would write a list of what value, whether it's real or not, what value have I received from this space? It's community. Maybe
mhm.
it's just so and so watches my kid. So then you can start substituting out. That might mean joining
Yes.
another prayer group on Facebook. I don't know, whatever that is, and
Yes.
just weaning yourself out so that it might be that you don't even leave that church, but because you're not so emotionally or physically dependent on it, their whatevers don't mean nothing anymore.
Yeah.
Like I just hear the
Yeah.
word from fake preacher and go, there you go. Man, I don't mean that, but I do. No, I can just hear the word and leave
Mm.
because now
Yeah.
I've created a social group outside of or
Mhm.
ABC to EFG. So I like that kind of slow walk process out. There's two scriptures I think about. The left hand shouldn't know what the right hand is doing, or vice versa. And then there's a scripture I believe in Proverbs that you're wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And
Yeah.
so it's this idea of that I'm going to quietly or stealthily move and make
Mhm.
baby steps out. I
Yeah.
I wish I would have heard that many moons ago. That's such great
Mhm.
advice, Dr. Felicia. Let me ask you this: somebody, most, in my opinion, well, let me talk about me. I have experienced spiritual abuse, and one of the things it affected was my relationship with God. And I had to redefine who God was to me and almost came close to just not even believing in God because my situation was
Mm.
so deep.
Wow.
Where you're a therapist, someone needs to know this. Where is God in all of this?
Yeah, and here's where we go back to the scriptures because God might be just because God is present
Mhm.
and seeing things that are happening doesn't mean that he is approving what is happening. So there's a whole passage in Ezekiel 34 that talks about abusive shepherds and how the shepherds are basically like cannibalizing the sheep, they're mistreating them, and God's anger is so apparent
Mm,
toward these abusive shepherds. We see all through the Bible about what God's attitude is toward people who abuse their authority. So when Jesus came to earth, he said, "We're not going to lord it over people like, you know, I think he referenced the Romans do. Like, we're not going to lord our authority over people.
yeah,
We're going to be here to serve, not to boss around people and tell them what to do, right? There's another parable about, I think, a wicked overseer, and he was beating the people under him and was getting drunk and basically neglecting his duties.
right.
And there was a bad outcome from him from the end when the person over everything came back.
Mm,
And so if we read and if we read the scriptures and truly understand it for ourselves, not what someone cherry picks to select their own agenda and fit their own agenda, but the overall picture we see of God, he does not like nor condone that.
mm,
Because when he sent his own son to the earth, he wasn't there telling everybody you have to do this or what else, or trying to manipulate people.
right,
People could come to follow him or not,
right,
right? He didn't force anybody to do anything. And in fact, at one point during Jesus' ministry, a lot of people left.
right.
And he didn't say, oh, all these bad things are going to happen to you before
Yeah,
you know, when you leave. Sometimes pastors will do that to other congregants, like, oh, if you leave, I know you'll be back,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or you better watch your back as you're out there because you can't do this and that and expect to receive blessings in your life. And Jesus didn't do that.
Right.
People, you know, we have free will. You could either follow him or you don't follow him, but
Yeah.
he didn't operate from that place of controlling people.
I love that. I love that. In your practice, do you find most victims of spiritual abuse walk away from God completely, or do they redefine their understanding of God?
I've seen both. I see more of the latter, though, the redefining, but it doesn't happen right away for some people. Some people have had to take a break altogether
Absolutely.
from being in spiritual environments, or they might, you know, one person I've heard this advice before is they'll say, okay, I'm going to go sit in the back.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the last to get there and the first to leave. It's a getting your feet wet sort of thing. And sometimes taking a break and saying, I need to really reevaluate this,
Yeah.
going to a different type of congregation, even changing their own spiritual practices. I see a lot of people reevaluating what they do and find that they're doing it out of fear
Mhm.
instead of this is what I want to do.
Mhm.
They're moving away from something instead of moving toward God. And so I see that happening, but eventually it gets redefined. And for many people, even closer, but less defined by outward rules and arbitrary markers of spirituality.
Absolutely. That's what happened with me in my story. I I got rid of all things God, and I said to
Mm,
myself, I am going to live my life as just a human being, and whatever naturally comes out of me is how I will
mm,
serve God. And there was a lot that I don't a lot of things I don't adhere to, I don't believe in anymore. But to my surprise, there was way more that I'm still
mm.
very much connected to. And so
Yeah.
I am one of those people that I came all the way out the water, and then I woke up and realized, or not woke up, but I looked up and realized, oh, I'm back in the water, but in the water I want to, the body of water I want to be in, with the temperature, with the depth. I prefer the sea, not bathtub water. I created it for me. Dr. Felucia, my word, my word, my word. Thank you so much for your expertise. Thank you so much for your ability to plainly define and help illustrate. I say illustrate because some people need to be able to see it. They felt it, but they didn't have any kind of form or capsule to put that energy in so that they can
Mm.
understand, I don't deserve this. I shouldn't be in here. What I want you to do real quick is talk to us about how we can get a hold of you. Give us all things Dr. Felucia for somebody who might really want to reach out to you.
Okay, great. So I have a YouTube channel called Skill Set Counseling. And so if you just put in YouTube at Skill Set Counseling, that's a handle, you'll find it. I also have a website, skillsetcounseling.com. And then you can also email me, Dr. Felucia at skillsetcounseling.com. And there's also some you can go on the website too to book a free consultation, but that link is being a bit iffy right now. So the best thing is just to directly email me to set up a consultation because I'm licensed in a few states, but then also through other states, I do telehealth.
Mhm.
So I'm licensed in Georgia, licensed in Michigan, and then through something called SciPact, I have telehealth privileges in about 40 states right now. And so there's a good chance that if you'd want to work together, I can see you via telehealth.
I love that. I love, love, love. And let me tell you this, I'm not just saying this because she's on my show. I'm saying this because I found her because she popped up in my algorithm, and her videos are not long, but as eloquent as she has spoken in this last 40 or so minutes is as eloquent as she speaks on her videos, and they're direct, they're to the point, and they're potent. And so I highly suggest, as a matter of fact, you can look in the description box connected to this video and just go there and click the link. You don't have to worry about spelling it right. Click the link for all things Dr. Felucia, and you will not, and go over there and subscribe to her YouTube channel. You will not be disappointed by visiting her YouTube channel. If you feel like you need a follow up or a one on one, reach out to her, go to her website and see, or email her and see if your state is included. And if it is, set that free consultation. I am someone who has been practicing going to therapy since 2016. And I would not be in this seat that I am right now talking to you if I did not have someone that was licensed, educated, and had a practice to help me get out. And so I'm not going to act like that's not important. It is extremely important. All right. We're going to take one more break, and then I'm going to come back with my final thoughts. Be
Okay.
right back. I would love for you to join our email community. In the description box of this video is a link. You click it, put your name and email address in the information, press submit, and you are going to be a part of our email community. But guess what? You got to check your spam box because there's a double opt-in. So you got to confirm that you truly meant to sign up. Would you like to be notified every time we go live? There's a simple way to do that. Join our free text club. All you got to do is text V Terrell Hill to this number, 833-458-3658. You just text it. Text V Terrell Hill to 833 458-3658. All right, this is the last announcement, and then we're going back to the content. I am gifted to help people become their best self, and I want to offer you a free consultation. There has never been one person that has had a free consultation with me that did not leave better than when they came, all right? All of that information I just went over is in the description box connected to this video. All right, let's get back to the content. What a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful interview I had with our special guest, Dr. Foluso. Again, my name is Vitor Hill. I'm a soul healer. How did I get to healing souls? I got to healing souls because my soul was broken. And I realized that I almost didn't make it out. And when I did, I made a covenant with myself to make sure others have made it out. And that's the reason why we did this interview today, not to beat or harm the church. If there was such thing as having a first love, my first love was the Christian church. And today she'll always be special to me, though we don't really date often, well, she'll always be special to me. So it's not my intention to hurt or harm. It's our intention rather help, to help you. Your local church that you're attending now is not the only great local church in your community. There are others out there. So I don't want you to leave God. I want you to leave that space you're in that is harming you. And it is okay to question. It is okay to sit and think. You might think and realize, oh, well, no, it's not really that I'm being spiritually abused. It's just that I don't use my voice enough. That maybe if I go tell Pastor how I feel, he or she might know and they might respond with love. And so this show might not mean that you're being spiritually abused. Maybe it's just to get you to think, to motivate you to act or put yourself first. Maybe it's not your pastor who's causing you to go to all the revivals and all the services. Maybe it's that perceived thought that you're failing God. And if just that alone gets you to think and prioritize yourself, we did a good job. Secondly, I want to say there are some of you out there, you're a parent, you're a youth leader, you're a pastor, you're a member, you're a group leader, and you might have found yourself looking like the profile of the abuser. If that's the case, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an abuser, but it might mean that you've just been passed down things from your early church experiences that now you're applying to others. And there's an easy fix to that, and that's just simply fixing it. You do not have to be controlling. As a matter of fact, if you want to be a great leader, it's best to have obedient members than controlled members because you can get way more out of them. You can get way more progress and productivity, and you won't burn out, Mr. Pastor, ma'am, Pastor. All right? Point is this: church is supposed to be a safe space. Spirituality was supposed to be a journey almost like falling in love. There is not supposed to be, I don't believe it was meant for to be this many tears and this much grief and regret. And so set yourself free. If you feel like you are a victim, set yourself free before you become an abuser. And if you are an abuser, set yourself free so that you can get the grace you needed when you were a victim. And if you do that, you'll make the world a better place. All right? I'm not going to fuss at you today because I want you to heal. I want all of us to be better. I want all of us to spread this light that we have discovered called God. And if I can do that, then I don't no need to boss up or be mean. I can do that on another day. All right. All right. If you've enjoyed today's session, you'll probably enjoy episode 1 through 6. We've had messages to the abuser, messages to the victim. We talked about grooming. We talked about honesty, talked about the void. We talked about the pass through or the pattern of abuse that starts with great grandma to mama to now you. And now we're at episode 7, identifying and recovering from spiritual abuse. So there is a whole playlist attached to this YouTube channel that can give you all of those episodes. Lastly, I want to say this. I have a private community called Safe Space. It doesn't matter what you believe in. I don't care what God you serve. I don't care your color, fat, skinny, loud. We have some loud people. We have really, really loud people in that community. And we have some very passive and quiet people in the community. Well, okay, you say, well, Victor Hill, what is the qualifications or rather the criteria of joining Safe Space? Well, you have to believe in yourself, or you have to be willing to try and believe again. If you can match one of those, then you are a perfect candidate to join my private community Safe Space. And that link is connected to the video description box, connected to this video. Um, you have a free 7-day trial. Okay. So you can get in there and look around and poke around for 7 whole days just to see what it's about before you're charged a nominal fee of just $10 a month. All right. All of that and more, all the things for V2L Hill is in the video description box connected to this video. I really want you to be well. Leave a comment. I'll come back and reply. And if it's directed to Dr. Felicia, I'll email her. And if she so choose, she can come under the reply. Or go talk to her, email her. All right. Until next time, be blessed.